All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to lunchtime. Thank you all so much for joining today's webinar. Today is the start of a two-part webinar series on mental health and IDD. In the chat box, if you don't mind, please introduce yourself and tell us your name, where you're from, and why you've joined this conversation today. So my name is Dr. Morgan Foster, and I am an assistant professor and extension specialist who oversees our Disability Community Coordinators Initiative. This initiative is led by Texas A&M AgriLife Extension Service in partnership with the Texas Council for Developmental Disabilities, or TCDD. This initiative aims to strengthen local, regional, and statewide extension efforts to connect individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities and their families with valuable resources, education, and support across the state. There are disability community coordinators across the state, including my colleagues Erin Fogarty in North Texas, Olu Motoni in East Texas, Rosa Gale in South Texas, and Alexandra Venegas in Central Texas. Just some quick Zoom info for today. During today's sessions, all attendees' cameras and microphones are off. However, to communicate with our presenter or with any of the staff here today, you can ask questions via the chat box or the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. Also, closed captioning is being provided through the Zoom live captioning feature. So just make sure you click on closed captions for that to be able to show. And I will now introduce our lovely speaker for the day. Today's session is led by Mr. Charles G. Charles is a mental health professional based in Dallas, Texas, and he earned his bachelor's and master's degrees from the University of Texas at Austin. Go Longhorns. As a licensed professional counselor and change agent, Charles has spent countless hours advocating and supporting for populations in need. After leaving his career in higher education, Charles started his private practice, the Cardinal Collective. Cardinal Collective was born from the idea that growth and healing are possible, especially when you have a community to support you. As a clinician, he ensures his clients feel supported and have a healthy and safe outlet to process life struggles. Alongside his work with clients, he also facilitates workshops surrounding mental health and wellness for various businesses and organizations. Outside of work, he enjoys trying new foods, paddleboarding, roller skating, and spending time with his close friends and family. So thank you again for joining our presentation. Now I'd like to hand it over to you and we'll get started.
Perfect. Good afternoon, good day, good people. I hope everybody is doing well. As mentioned, my name is Charles, and I'm excited to be here with you all today. I know that outside of your roles, you may be managing a lot, so I'm hopeful that our time together will be helpful for you and applicable across many of the different aspects of your life, and not just as a caregiver or as a direct support professionals, but the ability to really think about how many of these different things that we discussed today can be applicable to your day-to-day lives. So, with that in mind, I want to quickly kind of go over what we'll explore today. I really want to take some time to explore what self-care really means, for you to be able to identify when you actually need to reset, and whether that is through boundaries, team or community support, or also increasing practical steps for a healthier life, just thinking about different ways that you can engage with self-care and with this work across the board. So we'll spend a little time going through some case studies to show you some real world situations and scenarios where some of these things may be applicable across the board. So let's quickly kind of just define self-care. And I'll also define a couple other terms, and these will kind of serve as our working definitions for our time together today. So self-care is defined as actions individuals take to promote their physical, emotional, psychological, and spiritual well-being. It encompasses strategies for staying healthy and managing stress with the goal of achieving overall wellness. This includes addressing needs across the eight dimensions of emotional, spiritual, intellectual, physical, environmental, financial, occupational, and social. So when we think about self-care, it's not limited to just one domain. It actually, crosses several domains amongst, the day-to-day lives and engagement that we do. So why is this important? Right? Why do we talk about self-care? Sometimes we may try to convince ourselves that we're good or that what we're experiencing is normal. And when in fact, just because it's normal doesn't mean it's exactly healthy, right? So it's important to explore self-care to one, break down the stigma around help-seeking behaviors. Two, mental wellness is key to longevity and quality care. Three, thinking about direct support work, it being emotionally and also physically demanding, and then high emotional stress in IDD settings, given the nuances. And then lastly, here, just high rates of turnover and burnout. So, this is why it's important. This is why it's important to talk about self care as it relates to the work that we do, as it relates to the settings that we're in. And on top of that, I think, with all of these things in mind, the symptoms might be even more pervasive if you're from an historically marginalized group, right, that may feel these things a little bit more intensely than your everyday average person that is working in these spaces. So with that, I want to, talk about burnout, right? With high rates of turnover, stress, and also burnout at the top of mind, burnout is a complex issue resulting from chronic workplace stress that encompasses exhaustion, depersonalization, reduced personal accomplishments. It also has physical and emotional consequences for individuals impacting their work across the board, right? It's quite difficult for us to show up our authentic selves when we don't really have a whole lot to give, right? When we are oftentimes struggling to show up because we have continued to push through, we've continued to try to make space, when we've convinced ourselves that we can keep going, more times than not, we've reached the point of burnout, right? And then there's compassion fatigue, right? Alongside burnout, you may also experience compassion fatigue. It's defined as broadly defined concept that can include emotional, physical, and spiritual distress in those providing care to another, right? It is associated with caregiving, where people are experiencing significant emotional and physical pain and suffering as it relates to caregiving roles, right? So wanting to be there, wanting to support, wanting to show up no matter the cost, right? We are constantly giving and giving and giving and giving, but we haven't made room for restoration. We haven't quite made room for us to allow ourselves to reset and refocus. So we start to experience some kind of compassion fatigue. So as we experience burnout and compassion fatigue, these results are symptoms that, start to show up for us, right? So we might start to feel emotionally exhausted, right? That means, a state of feeling emotionally drained and overwhelmed by the demands of work or just life in general. Reduced personal accomplishments, a feeling of being ineffective or unproductive despite efforts at work or even in our personal tasks. Impaired cognitive functioning, which happens more times than we realize it. The difficulty around concentrating, right? Remembering things or processing information clearly. This happens to us more times than not. And in my experience, we tend to dismiss it, right? Oh, I just can't remember, or I'm having trouble concentrating. And we just kind of blow it off. But these are things that really do lead to us experiencing some of that burnout and compassion fatigue. Maybe we're also experiencing some increased physical symptoms, right? Maybe we're having headaches more frequently. Maybe we're feeling a bit more fatigued, or we're feeling stress in our body in some kind of way. Maybe we're a little bit more irritable. I know that I have been there. So maybe we're experiencing a heightened sensitivity or quickness to frustration or annoyance or anger. I know that when, we are in situations that require 120% of us, we have very little time to actually take care of all of the things that we need to in a healthy way. So we might feel a little bit of sensitivity. We might feel a bit frustrated as we are going through it. Sleep disturbance. I love talking about sleep. It's one of the most underrated things to discuss because we oftentimes think that we can get sleep back, but we can't. Um, And so sometimes we might have some trouble falling asleep. We may have some trouble staying asleep or even waking up or feeling rested, right? Research says that we should spend no less than 3 hours on our phones right before bedtime. And I know that in this world, in this day and age, that is quite difficult. And so when I work with a lot of clients and I talk about sleep, my hope is that people will at least spend an hour disconnected from technology of any kind before sleep so that they're able to kind of get through the night. Detachment, right? Maybe we're feeling disconnected, emotionally distant from those that we are working with, those that we are supporting, even family and friends as well. Maybe we're not feeling as empathetic as we once did. So, not really having a care or concern or having a sense of compassion for other folks. We also might feel a bit powerless, right? Lacking control over the circumstances, feeling like we just have to accept what is no matter what. And then lastly, here, maybe we are experiencing some impaired decision making, right? Struggling to make clear and conscious choices or feeling confident in our decision making due to feeling fatigued, right? Due to not getting enough sleep, things being on our plate that we cannot manage alone. So I know this list is quite exhaustive, but I am curious from folks, what are the signs of either burnout or compassion fatigue? And we should see a poll come up here shortly, but I'm curious, what are people experiencing when it comes to burnout and compassion fatigue? And if you could just go ahead and answer the poll question based off of what was on the previous slide. What are folks experiencing? And as you're filling this out, I'll just kind of briefly kind of talk through what I'm seeing. Many of us are feeling very irritable, which is expected when we just don't have the capacity. Some of us are also feeling emotionally exhausted as well. Yes, waking up in the night feeling tired. Absolutely. So, not allowing our brains to like really reset, uh, feeling exhausted, not sleeping well, jaded. Absolutely. So when we think about all of these things, right? When we think about what comes up for us, we have to also think about a plan of action too, right? We also have to think about kind of what comes next. How do we kind of move forward as well? What are some things that we're willing to commit to in order to create some substantial change around us as well? So, as we experience all of these things, what are we doing? How are we supporting ourselves in the midst of the chaos, if you will? How are we showing up for ourselves in a way that is saying that we're going to do something that will create long-term change, right? We may be good for creating some change in the here and now, but what is going to be helpful for the long term, right? Um, so being tired and not being able to connect and can't function. How do we reorient how we show up in our own lives as well? So as I'm talking about this, it is important why we talk about why self-care is essential, right? So it creates this powerful ripple effect that benefits each of us to show up for ourselves and also to think about the people that we support as well. So, first and foremost, self care, it really does enhance our resilience and our overall mental well being and helping us stay grounded, even during high stress situations. It also reduces the risk of burnout, increases job satisfaction, and making it more likely that we can continue doing the important work with energy, but also with purpose as well. Many of us that are involved in this work love it, care about it, and really want to do it. But how do we take care of ourselves so that we are healthy in the execution of the work, right? When we take care of ourselves, we're also able to provide a higher quality support, which directly improves the outcomes for individuals that we serve across the board. Self care gives us the capacity to handle the day to day responsibilities with more ease, and it supports mental clarity, helping us, make better decisions, staying organized, and responding thoughtfully instead of reactively, right? Over time, self care helps us establish a new normal, right? One that centers peace, balance, sustainability. It creates, emotional space that we need to approach our work, right, in a healthy and an intentional way that allows us to maintain a healthier, more hopeful outlook on life across the board, both inside and outside of work. So, as we are thinking about and as we're moving through these things, we have to build up a new normal, right? Self care, it's good when it can be applied in the moment, but how do we think about what does long term change, long term care look like for us? And it can easily feel overwhelming to think big picture. What does this mean? How do I show up in this? How do I do this? Am I actually ready to make the changes? You're not ready until you try, right? Sometimes we may not make the changes because we're afraid that we're not making the right changes. I push back and say what's right or wrong, but more so what's authentic. What are you actually trying to do in order to make the necessary changes for your life to look better? So with that, we've discussed what takes away from self-care, what it impacts. I want to now kind of like go into a little bit more detail about what we can do about it in a couple different aspects. So whether that be the physical aspect, emotional aspect, mental aspect, and even some practical engagement as well. So one, like I've said already, prioritizing sleep. Sometimes it's not just about the amount of hours of sleep that we get, but what we do around our sleep. So if you don't, consider developing creating a nighttime routine, right? So if your bedtime is 10 p.m., what does your nighttime routine look like starting at 8:30 or 9 o'clock? That can be dimming the lights, that can be turning off electronics, going from the TV to the iPad, but thinking about ways that you can show up for yourself around bedtime differently than what you've had before. Putting the phone on the dresser or the nightstand or somewhere away from you so that you can actually get some rest. Believe it or not, the phones actually keep us up longer, and does not promote us going to bed. And so it is quite important that we do develop a safe and protected nighttime routine. Allow our body to start creating some understanding around sleep, around habits, and how we're going to bed. Turning your phone off or putting your phone on do not disturb is also another one. The other thing that I talk about is, in addition to a good nighttime routine, we also need a good wake up routine as well. So for many of us, our alarms are on our phone. Um, it's the first thing that we're grabbing in the morning. So how do we create, again, some distance from our phone? How do we set fewer alarms, if we are want to set a lot of alarms? But how do we set some fewer alarms to allow ourselves to naturally kind of wake up and our phone not be the first thing that we grab and immediately diving into the woes of the world, right? It's so hard to disconnect from all of the things that's happening across the country in our immediate space, at work, with family. But how do we go to the information versus allowing the information to come to us? So creating some healthy boundaries around that. The other thing here around just developing a balanced nutrition intake, not necessarily going on a diet, but fueling your body with regular meals that include a variety of nutrients, right? What we eat directly affects our mood, our energy levels, and our focus throughout the day. I know that when my eating gets out of control, typically by day two, I'm asking myself, what am I stressed about? What am I hyperfixated on? What's going on to the point to where my eating is now being impacted by, the external stressors and pressure of the work that I may be doing. Staying hydrated, right? Um, really thinking about, hydration throughout the day. even that, can help limit, our feelings around irritability, being fatigued, or even if we're experiencing some difficulty concentrating, keeping water around us or near us, and having some reminders set to even, just consuming water throughout the day to just help keep us up and going and moving, right? Going for short walks, even if it's a 5 minute or 10 minute walk, can just boost circulation, ease some of the stress that you may be feeling, and also improving your mood, allowing yourself to just create more movement in your life. If you are in a more administrative role, as it relates to help and support, I mean, you're sitting at your desk all day, every day. What does it look like to take, a quick walk every hour, right? Whether that be for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, but allowing yourself some disruption in the work because the work is still going to be there. Taking those breaks, right? Allowing yourself to take breaks, allowing yourself to slow down, allowing yourself to show up for yourself differently. Sometimes we are afraid of change because it means that we have to be uncomfortable. And while we do have to be uncomfortable when it comes to change, doesn't necessarily mean that we're not safe, doesn't necessarily mean that the things won't get done. We're just trying it a new way. And allowing ourselves to try something in a different way actually may produce better results for us. I've always done it this way. I know that this way works. Sure, perfectly fine. And what happens if you allow yourself the ability to try something new? What happens if you allow yourself the ability to bet on yourself and trust yourself that even with trying something new, you likely will figure it out? Will there be hiccups along the way? Absolutely, but allowing yourself to in the emotional aspect of space when it comes to self-care, thinking about how you can engage with hobbies. And if you're someone who feels like you don't have hobbies because you're hyper engaged with work or you simply don't have time, I want to gently challenge that mindset. I want to encourage you to try something new. It doesn't have to be expensive or time consuming, but whether that is painting or gardening or walking or journaling or coloring, allowing yourself the freedom to do something for yourself, right? You're allowed to have joy outside of your responsibilities, allowing yourself to make time for you, right? Laugh, do more. Thinking about how laughter reduces stress, it lightens your emotional load, it makes things feel a bit more manageable, and it also allows you to connect with other people. Whether you're watching something funny, you're sharing jokes with friends or coworkers, or even recalling your own, funny moments of your own life, really allowing yourself to let go, creating some space for joy, right? Joy doesn't necessarily, have to be grand. It can be very small moments, right? What is a moment of the day that was very joyous for you? Sometimes it can be simply going for a walk. It can be a really quick and easy conversation. It can be the anticipation that something went way better or will go way better than what you initially thought, and thinking about how do you acknowledge those moments when they show up and being intentional about them and not taking them for granted, right? Even in the midst of the chaos, even in the midst of the burnout and the compassion fatigue, there can be moments of joy that we can hold on to help motivate us and get us through as we are experiencing just the different parts of the role that may be a little bit more taxing than not. And then lastly, here, engaging with affirming communities, right? Surrounding yourself with people who lift you up. Simple as that. Thinking about who sees you, thinking about the folks that will encourage you, about the people who, see your humanity and know that you are also human and that you need help, you need support. And it's important that as you do this work, it's important that as you continue to show up for yourself, but also the folks that you support, that you need to be supported as well. So, thinking about who is a part of that community, who is a part of your self care team, right? I oftentimes talk about, we have our care team, our PCP, our optometrist, our dentist, so on and so forth. But who is in our personal worlds that is a part of our self care team, right? Is it particular friends? Is it family? And what is their role? How do you want to be supported by these particular individuals, right? The emotional, self-care practices, remind us that we are actually more than what we do, right? We are whole human. We are deserving of happiness. We are deserving of rest and connection. And in addition to the work that we do, I oftentimes will ask people, who are you outside of what you do? And for some folks, that is a bit hard to answer because a lot of our identity is wrapped up in what we do. So it can be quite hard to really sit with and think about, who am I as a person? What are the things that I like to do and how I show up in those things, those spaces? And then mental here, when we think about, self-care techniques, these practices help calm our thoughts, focus our energy, and protect our peace of mind, right? So first, mindfulness and meditation. These are powerful tools to quiet the noise in our heads and, bring us back to the present moment. Many of us spend a lot of time in the what if or the future thoughts or what about or I shoulda, coulda, woulda. How do we stay focused on the present moment, even if the future moments may be a little bit difficult for us? But how do we recenter ourselves, even if it's just 5 minutes of doing some kind of breath work or some kind of short guided meditation? Really can help reduce our anxiety and increase our clarity as well. When I talk about mindfulness and meditation and breath work, most times when I'm working with my clients in session, I'll set a 60-second timer and have them do some deep breath just for 60 seconds. And the power that breath work has is almost incomprehensible because I'm really thinking about what it means to reset, refocus in just 60 seconds. Allowing our bodies to regulate and get what it needs in those moments of time really does help reset, refocus our brain, and allow us to re engage with the space differently than what we were doing before, right? Maybe that is free journaling or gratitude journal. I talk about free journaling just in the sense of just a free write, just writing down whatever comes to mind first without judgment, without structure, just getting some things out onto paper and out of your head. And then gratitude journaling, right? Thinking about, I don't know, 5 things that you're grateful for at a given day. Some people find it helpful to do gratitude journals first thing in the morning. Some people find them to be helpful to do them in the middle of the day or late at night before they're going to bed as a part of their nighttime routine. But reflecting on, the things that you are grateful for, reflecting on the things that, have made an impact on you really can go a long way with setting the tone and the stage for how you engage with things, even on the hard days, right? Especially on the hard days, it's important to do this so that you are able to show up for yourself differently. Seeking therapy or coaching is also important. Talking with a professional doesn't necessarily mean that something's wrong. It means that you're taking responsibility for your mental well-being. It's also a sign of strength, not of weakness. Seeking, some form of therapy means that you might try to be preventing something from being wrong. So you're taking the necessary steps to support your mental health along the journey, right? Seeing it as a useful tool to help you as you go throughout your day to day, right? Being in therapy doesn't mean that you're broken, doesn't mean that you're weak, but you've taken a step to really help you show up for yourself than what you have done before differently, right? Really thinking about the things that you can explore in an unbiased way to really help you navigate the work and the pressures of how you are showing up in the workplace. And then mindless activities, like I said, like TV, coloring, doing some kind of crafts so that you can create space for that. And then I also just want to mention just some practical ways of engagement. Scheduling self-care like an appointment, right? Oftentimes I would put self-care on my calendar over the course of any given week, just so that I knew that this was a time to rest and relax. or to take a break, to take a walk or something like that, but scheduling it, using reminders, right? Creating and sticking to a reset day, right? So if you decide to take off of work for a mental health day, for a self-care day, not filling it up with errands or doctor's appointments, so on and so forth, but truly allowing yourself to reset, not run errands, not fill it up with other things, because once you're back at work the next day, it might feel like you didn't have any time off because you were handling other things. But how do you create some type of boundary around how you spend your time off? So if you need a reset day, but you also need doctor's appointments, maybe that means for the next 2 weeks, week one, you go to your doctor's appointments, week two, you have a reset day, and then developing healthy recovery techniques after high stress days, high stress periods. What are we doing, right? How are we supporting ourselves after we just experienced, some pretty intense stress? What are we doing? But in a healthy way. Many of us may run to food. I know that I have, and I know that I do from time to time. But what do we do to kind of help reshape how we show up for ourselves after a long day? So maybe that means taking a bath, a longer bath. Maybe that means listening to some music. Maybe that means cooking. I enjoy cooking. I love being in the kitchen. So although it can feel like more work for some people, I do enjoy being in the kitchen after a long, stressful day because I can get lost in the ingredients and the throes of all the things, and allow myself the decompression time from the long day. I talked a little bit about boundaries, um, as it relates to self care and putting them in a place where they are necessary. So I want to spend a little time talking about boundaries, why they are important, so on and so forth. So thinking about them, they really are things that are in place that protects our time, our energy, and our preferences, right? It reduces role confusion and burnout. It allows us to be firm and assertive when necessary. Um, Boundaries allow us to say no, and sometimes we are afraid to say no because we are afraid of letting other people down, especially within this work. As a direct support professional, as a caregiver in general, sometimes we are afraid to say no because what will that say about us? But it also allows us to set some clear expectations for engagement, right? Even if it seems simple or if it seems like, oh, this is something that other people or our teams or other support staff around us might understand. But oftentimes we have to set the stage, we have to set the tone, right? Boundaries, as much as it can be difficult for us to put them out there, we also have to follow them. So, an example that I like to give when it comes to boundaries is if I say that I'm available for all work related questions until 6 p.m., and my favorite coworker messages me at 6:05 or 6:10 and says, "Hey Charles, what time is that report due tomorrow? Please get back to me as soon as you can." And I'm like, "Oh, it's my favorite coworker. No big deal. It's 6:05. It's 6:10." But I made a clear boundary that 6 o'clock was the cutoff. If I decided to respond to that message, what I'm doing is communicating that my boundaries are not to be taken seriously. They're just a suggestion. And if you word it in the right way, I might respond. But how do I stick to the boundary? How do I just leave that message there and respond to it first thing in the morning when I am available? But in order to get people in some ways to respect our boundaries, we also have to respect our boundaries as well. Now, the thing with boundaries is that they can change. They're not set in stone, they're not stuck. Um, Boundaries that are applicable in Q1 may not be applicable in Q2. Boundaries that we have in place for the individuals that we're working with may look different from other individuals that we're working with, so on and so forth. Boundaries are not always like brick walls. They can be stop signs, they can be yield signs, the important thing is that when we set the boundaries, we have to be clear in the expectation for engagement, right? We have to be clear in what we are going to do or how we are going to show up and what the expectation is around it. So what that means is in practice is, all right, I'm sorry, I can't commit to that right now. If blank is taken off of my plate, I will be able to give more attention to XYZ. Today, I'm only available until X time. However, tomorrow I have more flexibility. I'm sorry that doesn't work with my schedule this week. Give me a few, I don't know, days, hours a week to tell you when I'm available. Unfortunately, my availability has changed. I can no longer commit to does XYZ work for you? I think these are really good phrases to use when we are afraid to say no, right? When we are afraid to change our mind, because it leaves us in this space where we're not feeling stuck. Well, what if I've already committed to a thing and I can no longer do it? Hey, my availability has changed. I can't do it. Now I'm going to also provide you with an alternate. Let's talk about it. Let's discuss it. Let's kind of see what comes of that. If a supervisor or another team member or someone else on a caregiving team is working with you and want to assign or ask you for help in this way, saying, hey, if XYZ is taken off of my plate, I'm more than willing to give attention to this thing. But we have to be able to show up for ourselves in these ways to in order to create better self-care, better wellness across the board. If we continue to give and give and give and not have healthy boundaries, it becomes even more difficult for us to show up for ourselves, especially in this work, especially as we are in these supportive roles. So, team-based support strategies, right? And self-care doesn't necessarily have to be a solo journey, right? And it's not also only applicable to what do you call it? Actual like work environments, but also thinking about potentially even non-traditional caregivers as well, right? There's a community around it, there's support around it. What does these things look like in practice? So that is communication and exploration, right? Teams thrive. We all thrive when communication is open, it's respectful, and there's a level of curiosity there. Making space to ask questions, showing and building up authenticity between team members so that we can build trust and collaboration amongst one another, right? How do we do that? Through showing vulnerability and encouraging collaboration and making people feel seen and safe as they engage, and being able to bring them full selves into the workplace. How do we normalize healthy check-ins and debriefs, not just gossip, right? As much as we want to gossip about the drama of the things, but how do we create actual care around the work that we're doing? Hey, let's check in. Hey, let's debrief what just happened in a way that would lead to a healthier outcome, right? In a way that allows us to show up for ourselves and other people. Who is our peer support network, right? Who is your wellness buddy? Do you have a wellness buddy? Who can you call on that will actually hold you accountable for taking care of yourself? Who is the person that you will hear when they say, hey, Charles, you've been working really hard. You need to take some time off, that you hear it and won't make excuses about it. Well, it's just the end of the season. Well, it's just the end of the quarter. And sometimes I'll get clients that'll say those types of things and they'll say, well, I'll take off in 3 weeks. I think that is great. And what are you going to do about this week? What are you going to do about this week and how you show up? Celebrating these successes, collectively problem solving to reduce isolation. I think talking about what we are experiencing and what we're doing about it normalizes how we show up in a lot of the work that we do as well. And then thinking about employee resource groups, EAP programs for things like counseling and such too. Taking PTO, recognizing the success around you, creating a culture of wellness as well. It takes that time and intention um, to put into that work, being an encouraging voice to one another. I think that if folks are in management and supervisory roles, that this work is also necessary. The acknowledgement of this work is also necessary from the top down, right? How do we lead by example? And again, self care doesn't have to be these grandiose things. They can be very small, they can be very simple. But if people know and understand that in this work that it's okay to, shift a work schedule if possible, it's okay to ask for help, it's okay to be vulnerable and ask for additional support when you need to. How do we encourage these things to show up in a way that is saying that this is now the new norm, right? How do we create policies to promote self-care behavior? How do we identify what is needed to bounce back under significant stress? How do we move away from feeling like the ball has to kind of keep rolling? So, with that in mind, I want to kind of transition to our last portion here around just some case studies. And I want to talk through just two of them. The first one I'm going to put up on the screen, but in the chat, I would love for you to put up what you see as some identified problems here. So, Marcus has recently taken on extra shifts due to staffing shortage at his group home. In the past 2 weeks, he has had little time to rest, eat balanced meals, or decompress after emotionally intense workdays. He notices he is becoming impatient with clients, forgetting small but important tasks like medication checks and having difficulty focusing during team meetings. At home, he feels too exhausted to engage with his partner or kids, leading to rising tensions. Marcus dismisses the signs of just part of the job, unaware that his acute burnout is affecting the safety and quality of care for those he supports. What are some problems that you see that he is experiencing here? Being impatient, absolutely. Sleep disturbance, forgetfulness, med checks, little interest in others and family, absolutely. All right, so these skip meals, poor sleep, he's tired, he's exhausted, growing irritability, difficulty focusing on task-related errors, diminished presence at home and family tensions, normalizing burnout as an expected part of the job, right? So these are all of the problems that he is experiencing. What might be some strategies that you all recommend for him as things have not gotten too bad? What might be some self care strategies that he can engage with? Quit working overtime, absolutely. Saying no, getting more sleep. And I like the point here around saying no to the extra shifts, right? He would probably say, well, I need the money. Okay, that's great, that's fine. And if that is the case, if you decided that this is a thing that you're going to do, how else are we going to create um, some better strategies for self-care and recovery, right? Spending time with family, meal prepping, setting boundaries, adjusting the sleep schedule. Absolutely. So if we've decided that, hey, I'm still going to work, okay, great. How do we just work a little bit better? So maybe that means for him using some paid time off, scheduling some daily breaks as he is showing up, implementing mindfulness reduction techniques after work, open communication with supervisors about his workload and capacity, involving family and co-creating downtime and supporting activities were just a few things that I picked up in addition to some of the things that you all have said as well, right? So that's that. I also want to show you one more that may be a little bit more severe. So here's another one. After nearly a decade as a DSP, Sean is experiencing full blown burnout. He often arrives late, feels numb during client interactions. He's begun calling in sick more frequently. His documentation is inconsistent, and supervisors have expressed concern about his performance. Deshaun's relationship has deteriorated. He's socially isolated, irritable with loved ones, and dealing with insomnia and anxiety. Despite clear signs of distress, Deshaun feels trapped by guilt and pressure to just push through. The absence of effective self care practices and lack of organizational support have left him emotionally depleted and at risk of leaving the field altogether. What are some problems that we're seeing here, y'all? Management needing to intervene, numbness, isolation. He's definitely let it go too long. Does not feel supported. Absolutely. And mind you, this is someone that's been in the field for nearly a decade. So sometimes we think like, oh, you've been in it for so long, you should be good. No, sometimes the longer we're in it, the more difficult it becomes for us to take care of ourselves. So some of the identified problems, right? So chronic emotional exhaustion. He's late, has poor performance. He's experiencing some insomnia, anxiety, and emotional dysregulation. He's isolated himself. He's experiencing some guilt and pressure to keep going despite distress. And he probably feels that pressure to keep going because he's been doing the work for so long, right? So, what might be some things that we can do to help recover? Ooh, to this point here, we're our own advocate. No one is responsible for our well being. Absolutely. How do we advocate for ourselves? How do we ask the question, even if the response is no? Right? Sometimes we made up in our mind that we're not going to ask a question or we're not going to do a thing because oh, I already know what Charles is going to say, so I'm not going to even engage. Give Charles a chance to say no. Give Charles a chance to fail you, but don't rob him of that opportunity to support you. Seeking outside help, support groups, counseling, PCP, absolutely. Stepping away, no job is worth it. I completely agree. Developing and finding a wellness buddy. Who are the people that we can lean on when we need to? So some of this, so seeking professional therapy, whether there's EAP with your PCP or outside private practice therapy as well. Exploring temporary leave of absence or reassignment to reduce exposure to the work. Who is the support person that you need? Not isolating yourself. Rebuilding a self care routine, right? We've normalized only getting 4 or 5 hours of sleep. We've normalized just picking up fast food. We've normalized a sedentary life because this is just kind of what life is, and this is just how I'm showing up. But allowing yourself to show up in a way that is helpful for you, connecting with folks, with people to help you manage feeling burnt out, and engage management and structure recovery plan that supports. So I at least wanted to provide you all with a couple of real world examples where you can see how they may be directly applicable to you or they may be applicable to someone that you know. And so my hope is that you're able to kind of look at that and think about how self-care can be implemented, very early on in the career and even years into the career as well. So lastly, here, not necessarily anything I want you to do in a moment, but something I want you to just kind of like take home with you as a reflection activity. But what are you willing to commit to in order to take better care of yourself? Again, we're looking for longevity, and it sometimes just starts small. Who are the people that you can share with and hold you, and who can hold you accountable? Who are the people that you will listen to when they say, hey, it's time to take a break, and you listen and not make excuses. And sometimes we may make excuses and still listen. What do you need in order to make this change consistent throughout your experience? What might that be? So, from my time together today, I'm really hoping that you all know and understand that, mental health definitely does matter, right? I want people to be able to speak openly about um, how they are taking care of themselves, what they are doing, and how they can encourage other people to do it. Remembering that you are not alone and that community and connection are available if you choose to engage, and potentially even letting go of shame that you feel about not having it all together. How do you prioritize your own needs to have a better outcome for yourself, but also for the work that you do and the people that you support as well? Excuse me, practicing proper self-care, thinking about how we can reduce burnout and compassion fatigue, and thinking about how it is so essential in the roles that many of us are in. We've reviewed the common signs of distress and emotional instability in direct support roles. We've talked about setting and maintaining boundaries and is how much it is critical to protect your overall well-being, team-based approaches through traditional roles and also non-traditional roles as well, building up some form of resilience within the workplace. And then a collective focus on well-being helps prevent collective burnout and emotional exhaustion across the board. With that, I wanted to provide you all with some resources on just different websites and places that you all can check out. And they're also linked in the handout as well. But the National Alliance for Direct Support Professionals, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, the American Association on Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities, Texas Health and Human Services, and Texas Council for Developmental Disabilities. So, with that, before we go, and I'll check the chat here too, I would appreciate it, and the team would appreciate it if you completed the survey link for our time together today. This will help us know how you all received the presentation, if there's anything we can do differently moving forward. But I'm really hopeful that folks will complete the survey and make some time for it. We do have a little time left. I want to jump into a quick Q&A to see what questions folks may have, and then we can go from there. Any question? Thank you all so much for your engagement. Oh, yes, I can.
There's a question from Mr. Science. Are there any proactive work groups or communities that are taking mental health seriously and have a proven system to create effective strategies that are interested upon?
That I don't know off the top of my head, but I would imagine that they do exist. I think it comes down to being able to ask the questions directly about the types of support that are effective that we're looking for.
Feel free to drop any other questions. And if y'all have ideas for future topics, let us know too. That's also part of the evaluation link. And we're looking for more ways to address this space of mental health and IDD. I also want to say next week is our part 2 of this session or this series. So Wednesday, July 16th at noon, you can join Charles again for another session on mental health and IDD, and the registration link will be dropped in the chat. And then Sandra will put that link for the materials for today in the chat again, but you'll also receive a follow-up email with the slides from today as well. So stay on the lookout for that too. And we'll make this recording available as well. And also, if you are interested in staying in contact with Charles G, again, he is a licensed professional counselor. And so you can visit his website at thecardinalcollective.org. You can also email him or
Uh-oh, I think we lost Morgan. But yes, just if you choose to stay connected with me, you're welcome to check out my website or send me an email. As they mentioned, the evaluation will be in the chat, and also the link to the presentation will be sent out to everyone as well. Thank you all again for your time today. I really do appreciate it. I hope that you were able to take something away and really think about ways to implement this work into your day to day long term. So, again, thank you all for your participation and engagement. I really do appreciate it.